Yes.
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir. 1 minute. एक मिनिट देर आर
मोये सर माइक बंद मच्छिंद्र मोये
हा
सर माइक बंद करा.
मुळे सर कंटिन्यू प्रोसीड.
Good evening to one and all. I am Assistant Professor Mole Machindra. It gives immense pleasure to me introduce and welcome this session resource person, eminent scholar, Honorable Dr. Sudhakar Pardeshi sir. Sir is working as the Professor Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune. Educational qualification MSc, MTech, PhD. Teaching experience is having 24 years. Major scientific field of interest, geomorphology, remote sensing, geoinformatics, water resources, hazard management. Number of PhD awarded students are 6. Ongoing PhD students 3. Number of board studies, member of board studies, Northeast Hill University, Shillong, SNDT Women's University, Mumbai, Birla College, Kalyan. Academic membership, Indian Institute of Geoinformatics, Allahabad, Vice President, Institute of Indian Geographers, IIG Pune, Life Members and Joint Secretary, the Deccan Geographical Society Pune, Life Member, Indian Society of Remote Sensing Dehradun, Life Member, Indian Meteorological Society Pune, Life Member, Association of Punjab Geographers, Life Members, work as associate for Springer Special Information Research Journal, South Korea, members editorial board, Journal of Coastal Science, Maharashtra Bhugol Parishad, research projects, major projects to completed, UGC and ICSSR, ongoing project 1, ICSSR, publication national and international journals 32, international presentation, Malaysia, Chile, France, USA, Poland, China. Sir is having versatile personality. Then SP College in charge principal, Dr. Savita Datar ma'am, HOD Department of Geography, Dr. Sunil Gaikwad sir, course coordinator, Dr. Devne sir, joint coordinator, Dr. Dhavle sir, and all research fellow. I welcome you all in this session. I kindly request to sir, please continue the session.
Thank you very much for nice introduction. I think this was not required again because the students are same and the faculty or the resource person is also same.
Yes.
But anyways, you have to complete the formality. Uh, yeah, friends, we have to discuss today application of remote sensing and GIS. Many of you have already started using this kind of techniques, particularly remote sensing and GIS in your research field. I'm not aware how many of you have done courses, how many of you are already masters in this particular subject. But considering the audience in general, maybe some of you have not done any course or whatever you have learned that is only up to post-graduation level. And you might have not the exposure to these techniques, particularly remote sensing and GIS. And therefore, I have tried to make my presentation very moderate, not very technical and not too easy. I hope those who are aware of all these techniques, they will bear with me because I have to take care of the candidates, those who are not aware of these techniques. Definitely, some of the points will really help you to revise the knowledge you are having knowledge in the field of remote sensing and GIS. And you may find that some of the points already you have done. Already you are practicing all those things in different, say, at different levels, maybe for projects guiding the students or maybe for your research work. So in that case, this lecture in the workshop will help you to revise whatever you have learned so far. And sometimes you may find that there are many points which I have not covered. It is very obvious that it is not possible to cover many of the things in a short period of time, that is only 1.5 hours. So my suggestion, or what you can say, I ask you to suggest many such fields which I have not covered, maybe in the discussion, and our other candidates, those who have not done this kind of courses, they will learn many more things even from the candidates, those who have taken the training in this particular field. So I'm not going to claim that whatever I've told it is 100% covered. No, this is just a glimpse of the applications or the subject which we are going to discuss. It is just a part, a small part. Obviously, there are many fields where we can use remote sensing and GIS directly or indirectly. So before I start discussion, I would like to know that, is it okay if I go for, say, with the basics in the discussion and not in presentation? Obviously, I'm not going to discuss the basic things in the presentation. So my question would be, what is that you have learned about remote sensing? Up to what level? Hello?
Yes, sir. Sir. Students, please.
Sir, yeah, please respond.
Participant, please respond.
Screen display, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that question I should stop asking, because many of you have already taken the training in this field. Some of you have not taken any kind of training, not even at PG level, because at some centers this is optional course, but in the department it was compulsory from last few years, and maybe few of you have taken training in that. Anyways, that is not my problem. My problem is the level of say delivery of the content. So I will start with the basic thing, that is remote sensing and GIS. All of you know this, and maybe other resource persons, they have studied, they have told you about what is remote sensing, what is GIS. My basic question is, why and when to use remote sensing data, and why to use remote sensing data, and how to use remote sensing data and GIS tools. This is a cartoon or picture in front of you that is giving you the glimpse of different fields of application in remote sensing. Yeah, can you observe these features and tell me which are the probable fields in general, in geography or in general, where we can apply remote sensing? I expect the answers from the candidates, those who have not taken any kind of training, those who have done masters or some certificate course, if they maintain silence, and those who have not taken training, if they can answer, that will be great. Yes. Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, the candidates, can you answer my question?
Sir,
Yeah, anyone.
yeah,
Yes, please.
I have not taken any kind of training. I have studied remote
Mhm.
sensing when I was doing my PG. But from this image, I can say that remote sensing gives us information about the forestry, agriculture, land use pattern, and some aspects of human geography
Mhm.
like settlements. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, great. What else?
I have not included the part of physical geography,
Now this
maybe
question is open.
the atmosphere related aspects. Uh, Maybe I have
Yeah,
missed out
yes,
those.
yes. You can see the cloud cover, you can see atmospheric layer of atmosphere, right? And besides this, you have very undulating surface of land, which is, I mean, many of you might have noticed there are different levels of the land surface. Okay, there is no stream, but that can be done. No stream has shown here, no drainage line has shown here, but that can be done. And the undulating surface, that is in the form of relief on the earth surface. Okay, so you have atmosphere, you have the constituents of the atmosphere like clouds, then forest area, or you can say agricultural land, non-agricultural land, or land uses. Then settlement and the relief, already I have told you, relief of the surface. These are some of the areas where we can use remote sensing. This is just a picture, but it gives you a general idea of different fields where we can use remote sensing. Out of all these fields, I'm going to discuss about the remote sensing and GIS and its application in geomorphology. I know many of you are not the students of geomorphology, but definitely you will get certain idea about the application of these two techniques in your field. Besides these two, remote sensing, of course, there is one more remote sensing and GIS. There is one more technique or technology that is really helpful to us, and that is uh, GPS. So if you take overall geoinformatics as a field, and if we include all those techniques which are very popular in the field of earth sciences or even life sciences, like remote sensing, GIS, then came GPS. Now GPS has again having advanced versions of survey. Maybe you have studied handheld GPS and differential GPS. Okay, single frequency, dual frequency, DGPS. You might have studied. Then you have drone technology now, that is UAV, that is also used in our field. So this is a part of geoinformatics. Besides this, we have very other important branch, that is of GIS. So, so this is remote sensing. We have GIS now. Of course, GPS is useful in both of these technologies. Now GIS, as we know, we can prepare the map by using GIS. right? And so far, many of you have heard about GIS, many of you have used GIS, but it is very unfortunate to say that our students, right from PG to PhD, they use GIS for a very superficial purpose. They don't go for GIS analysis. Most of the students, they prepare GIS maps. They use GIS only to prepare map, like a drawing tool or a drawing software. Some of the students, those who have done some training, they go for certain query building. But beyond that, GIS helps in many fields. It is not only map making or map drawing. So many of the times PhD scholars, they say, I did GIS analysis. So what kind of GIS analysis they normally do? They simply prepare the tables, they put the attribute tables, and they create maps. That is not GIS, that is simply map making, map drawing. So if you have to do GIS analysis, then you have to find out certain details of the attributes or properties, characteristics of all those features which you are going to study or you are studying for your research work. So such kind of analysis is actually GIS analysis. Now I'll give you one simple example while discussing the subsequent slides. Then you will get to know how we can use GIS in the field of geography and how superficially we are using. That is also a question that should be asked by the research scholars, because I won't say or I won't ask you to take the training while doing your PhD. But you should know the basic things, how we can use these data sets and how the technology can be used for our research purpose. If you know that much of about these two techniques, that is sufficient for you. Maybe you should know what is vector map or what is shapefile, what is raster data, why raster is used in different areas of application, why not vector, or vice versa. Why vector is more useful than raster. So these kind of knowledge, if you are having, then it becomes very easy to you to write your thesis and also to write about the methodology, to defend your viva, because see, you can outsource the work from anyone. There is no issue. The person who is doing mapping or any analysis for you, he will use his or her own knowledge about the data set, about the about your study or the features in your study. But he or she cannot put insights or cannot give you all those details which are actually expected in your research. So my point is, when you are doing your research, you should be aware of all these tools and techniques which you are going to use in the analysis or even for data collection. So very interestingly now, in data collection also, you have different technologies available. So for example, you have Open Data Kit, ODK, you may have heard, or mobile survey. Have you heard that? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Have you used any mobile survey app?
Yes, sir. It was regarding the altimeter. It was an altimeter app, and it was generally showing the height above mean sea level. but it cannot be said as a reliable app because it was not uh, matching to the actual ground truth data.
Yeah, it is obvious that many of the handheld instrument, they do not match, they do not show accurate elevation. Okay.
Sir,
And
I
now
am
one
also
more
using
suggestion, we
GPS
should use the
Essential,
term elevation.
uh, which is
Okay.
showing the accuracy up to 5 meter of altitude.
Okay. Okay, right. Great. So many of you have used GPS and the mobile apps which are actually giving you GPS or elevation, coordinates and elevation. My point was totally different than this one. There are many apps now which are available on mobile or in your tab, which you can use for survey purpose, like socio-economic survey. This is not related to our topic of geomorphology, but it is again related to application of GIS. So yeah, so such kind of apps are there which you can use directly in offline mode, and this ODK can be used in different mobiles. So at a time you can 4 or 5 people can use that, and at the end of the day you can turn on the internet and the entire data can be uploaded to the cloud server, and finally you'll get the result of all the details of your questionnaire survey. Now it has become very easy. You don't have to do tabulation, you don't have to do separation and all kind of details. Again, no typing and retyping, that is not required. And therefore, such kind of apps are becoming very popular, particularly in the field of geography or the field in the subjects in which field work is essential. In geomorphology also, we can use the same thing. We can use ODK survey, and we can, if you have the questionnaire or if you have to fill the details of the landforms, so you can do that kind of table. You can prepare the table. Every time new table will be added to that ODK, and finally you will get the result ready. Result means tabulation ready. It won't give you result. So such kind of tools are there, but we have to explore so many things. Then you have Google Earth, that is also very popular. Yes or no? I think almost everyone might have used Google Earth.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
We are using.
Google Earth, almost everyone has used. Now, how many of you have used Google Earth, say, for to decide your study area, to delineate the study area, or just to observe study area? Quite possible. Those who are doing PhD, for them it is not very new thing. Before you prepare your proposal, when you discuss with your guide, they might have suggested to use your Google Earth. Then there are different sources like Google Earth Engine. Google Earth Engine also you can use. And we have Bhuvan by NRSC, prepared by NRSC or ISRO, you can say. These kind of data sources, it is not directly available to you, but you have to first go through the reconnaissance survey, what you are going to do, which area you are going to select, whether it is feasible or not, that you can explore in Google Earth, and from there you can start your journey towards the application of remote sensing and GIS. So let's continue this discussion, why RS and GIS. Nowadays, it is very important to have digital elevation model, and we have availability of different digital elevation models. And at the same time, we have remote sensing data that is, say, from panchromatic, like you can say digital elevation model, then multispectral and hyperspectral. So radiometrics and electromagnetics has developed a lot. The technological development is very good, and because of that we can get various data sets which are readily available. Earlier it was not the case. If you look at the conditions which were there before 15 years, just 15 years, when we started doing our PhD, I say it could be say after 95, okay, there was nothing like this. Of course, in the world it was available, but not in India. So digital elevation model was not there. So whatever you had to do, you had to go in the field, take the theodolite, or though in those days, not even this GPS was not introduced to the PhD students or in PG level. Now the conditions have changed very fast. After 15 years, you'll find that there are so many digital elevation models available with very good accuracy and all. But again, field work is essential. If we use remote sensing and GIS, it is essential to go in the field and cross-check the things. So with the availability of multispectral, hyperspectral images, it has become very easy now to find out the spatial or spatio-temporal variation in the features. I'm using the word spatio-temporal. Yes, because if you look at the features which are changing with time, like you have coastal deposits, coastal deposition, or river deposition, or meandering of the channels. So you can use various images with an interval of certain years, like 5 years, 10 years, something like this. And that's how you can find out the changes which took place over the period of time. So in this way, we can check the spatio-temporal variation in the future. Remote sensing is also very important input, and nowadays we can talk about the close range remote sensing. What is this close range remote sensing? Anybody? With very high resolution images. Any one of you close range remote sensing? Yes?
Sir, may I guess? It may be
Yeah.
while
Go ahead.
surveying by the
Whatever
drone above 200-meter altitude, it may be close range remote sensing.
less than 200. Yes, it is less than 200. Yeah, drone survey or drone imaging is the close range remote sensing, and that gives you very high resolution images. Remember that though drone is very, what you can say, easy and all, but for large areas it is of no use. Suppose you are working on the basin scale, like you have different scales of basins. Suppose I'm working on Bhima basin or Godavari basin, or for that matter Krishna basin. In such cases, these kind of close range techniques are not useful. But if I am using on the meandering channel, for example, then it is very easy for me to follow the channel for a certain length, and I can fly the drone and get the images. So for small areas, close range remote sensing by using drone, that can be a good data input or good source of data. But for large areas, you have different images, satellite images with different spatial resolution. Now for the friends, those who have not done any kind of remote sensing, for them such terms like spatial resolution, spectral resolution, temporal resolution, these words may not remember or they may not have used. So my point is, when you have a different range or you have range of spatial resolutions, you have to decide which remote sensing data you are going to use, and you have to understand the properties of that data. So that much of knowledge you should have. Somebody has used, say, any data which you cannot use because the scale of your study area, the size of your study area is different than the other person. For example, if I have to study vegetation, I cannot use MODIS data for a small basin because the MODIS data spatial resolution is 1 kilometer, right? And my basin or the study area or the watershed is not that big. So it is better to go for different spatial resolution. And that kind of knowledge you should have. This is very basic thing at PhD level. If you are doing geography, PhD in geography, and if you are going to use remote sensing data, then you should know the different spatial resolutions and the availability of data. Many of us go for Landsat or LIS3. Oh, these are the datasets which are very popular in Indian scenario. Landsat, why Landsat? Because my friend has suggested me Landsat is good. Why LIS3? Because my friend told me or my teacher told me. This is the general say perception of the candidates about the datasets. But there are many other sources which we never explore. We have ready-made data sets. You don't have to go for NDVI and all those things nowadays. You have ready-made data sources. Global data sets are available. So if you explore these things, the world is very vast. The world of data sets is very vast. That's what I'm telling. And you have to check what are the data sets available, what is the scale required, what level of spatial resolution will solve the purpose. And that's how you have to select the remote sensing data. So you have to use, you can use remote sensing and GIS. Why GIS? Now GIS is very easy, right? Yes, of course it is easy. Those who outsource, for them it is very easy. But those who are working in this field, they know how difficult it is. Nowadays you have many ready-made shape files available. Lots of data exchange is done with or without permission of the authorities. So we exchange the data, for example, shape files. Some agency has created shape file and we are exchanging this very easily with our friends. Then maps, digital maps or satellite images, these are very easily exchanged. So GIS helps us to map whatever we are going to analyze. First, we have to map that. You have to add the properties, attributes of all those features. And then you can go for analysis. It is not like that you prepare the map and GIS will give you everything. Unless and until you have the attribute data, GIS will not give you any result. So that is how we have to use GIS, and why it is very easy. You can modify from time to time within your PhD, say tenure or the period. It is quite possible that many of the times you'll find that, or you'll feel that, oh, the map I have prepared is not the thing which I wanted. Or the person who has prepared map for you, he has to prepare or change map again and again, because unless and until you are satisfied and the research guide is satisfied and the purpose is solved, the map has to be changed. Okay, and that is very easy in GIS because it is in this soft copy form. Earlier, this was not the case. When we were doing our masters, we had to trace the maps by using rotring pen and tracing paper and all. Once you made the mistake, if it is, say, if you can repair the map, that is okay. But if the mistake is major, then you have to throw that map. You cannot use the paper again. This is how we had to prepare at least 4 or 5 copies of the maps, and there were hardly 1 or 2 maps in the entire dissertation. Maximum 5, not more than that. Nowadays, you can put several maps together because it is very easy to replace the content. The shapefile remains same. You can replace the content. That is the beauty of GIS. GIS will give you the total essence of the details which you would like to show. You can add many numbers. You can go for analysis with many number of layers in GIS tool, and whatever combination you want, you can simply add or remove the layer or turn on and off the layers in the software, and you can produce the map. For example, I'll tell you, all of you have done topographic survey. Topographic survey, right? Yes or no? Or leave aside topographic survey. All of you have used Survey of India Toposheet map for interpretation. What do we do normally? We prepare contour map, we prepare settlement map, we prepare road network by using that sketch of topographic map, by using the map. Same thing is done in GIS. For the same area, you have to use different frames or different layers. Like contour will be different. Within contour, you can change the contour interval, whatever contour interval you want, right from 5 meters, 1 meter, 5 meter, 10 meter, 50 meters, whatever. Within 1 minute, you will get different map with different contour intervals. If you want to use road map, you can prepare the road network. You can combine road map and contour map together to see how the road level is changing over the topography. You can put settlements also together. Okay, in this way you can combine different layers together and you can generate the scenario, the real world situation. This is how GIS will help you not only to prepare the map, it will give you different levels of analysis. Third thing, you can prepare the models. 3D modeling is one of the good applications of GIS nowadays. Then you have other sorts of modeling which you can use to create the real world situation. For that, you should have the database with you. So such kind of flexibility is there in GIS, and therefore GIS is very popular. You can store the information, you can analyze it, again restore it, again open it, and you can represent the information or data by using GIS. So in the total period of your PhD, you can do n number of times, you can do the changes. And that is the most popular thing in GIS. Earlier, it was not the situation. Now let's move to the other slide. In geomorphology, in modern geomorphological research, particularly, the research is inextricably linked with spatial technology and geographic information system, GIS. Okay. Now, what happened over the period of times? I have told you earlier, we used to use topo sheet, and for surveying, we used to take the theodolite in the field. Then came GPS, which was with very little accuracy. Okay, it was not accurate. Then came DGPS with high accuracy. Then came drone, again with very high accuracy. So such kind of development has taken place in the technology. On one side, second part is development in computation. Computers developed very fast. Earlier, we used to had computers with very low RAM. Now you have computers with 8 GB RAM. Okay. You have phones with 8 GB RAM. You can do anything in your mobile phone. Even you can use mobile phone as your palm top, in which you can use mobile GIS, which is available now. You can go in the field, you can use mobile GIS, and you can draw the map. So such kind of things are available. That is technological advancement in the field of computation. So besides computation, you have advancement in the remote sensing, geodesy, photogrammetry, or you can say now drone technology. And all these things have made digital data available. On one side, availability of data is also increasing. After say making data available of Landsat, you'll find that Landsat and DEM, these are Landsat data and DEM. These were most popular data sets used in the field of earth sciences because it was easily available to a common user. No licensing or no pricing. And that was the most important, what you can say, shift or change in the field of geomorphology or earth sciences, when this particular DEM or Landsat images made available to the public. And from then onwards, particularly after 90s, you'll find that most of the geomorphic studies, they use remote sensing data and digital elevation model. Some of the applications are focusing on land surface analysis, change detection, hazard modeling. This we are going to discuss later. Some applications, approaches in geomorphology use statistical software like R software. You might have heard about R, MATLAB, or IDEAL, through which we can perform geospatial analysis. MATLAB is also one of the very strong software which you can use for modeling. Then you have R software, which is a also very popular. Like one example is given here. This is just initial part. This is just glimpse what I'm telling to you. Modeling of erosional process and landform evolution often requires the GIS with high-end capabilities. Okay, but sometimes these GIS softwares are not able to handle very large data sets. Earlier it was not possible. Now, yes, they have modified it. And therefore, people, they had to use MATLAB. They had to use R. And the beauty of these softwares is you can use these softwares for raster data analysis and representation also. And therefore, these R software, MATLAB, they are popular in the field of earth science. Okay, this is one example I've given just to tell at what level we can use GIS. Of course, lots of study or lots of knowledge gain is required if you have to apply this, if you have to use these kind of softwares. Let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, this is what I told you. Since the late 90s, use of remote sensing data and DAME has increased. Particularly, application of GIS has also increased in geomorphology. And this field of study, like geomorphology or the field of earth sciences, increased. Observe that there are a lot of applications of remote sensing data sets and GIS techniques, because there was development in computer science, remote sensing, and field photogrammetry. Already I have told you. Availability of global digital terrain data sets, like you have SRTM. Earlier it was SRTM 90 meters. Then people were very happy with SRTM 90 meter. DAME was available and they started using that. After that, because of the technological advancement, it was possible to prepare 30 meters data. Downscaling is done. 30 meters data was possible. Then after that, you have Cartosat DAME. Like you can go up to 6 meters, 2.5 meters, right? So you have different DAMEs also available, and because of that, it has become very easy to use these data sets. Now, applications of GIS in geomorphology, they vary from different approaches, one approach to other approach. There are different approaches. One is only for visualization purpose. Like if you are using Google Earth is simply visualization of the landforms. You cannot do any kind of, unless and until you have the license or permission, you cannot do any kind of analysis. You can visualize that. But there are many ways to get the tiles of Google Earth images also, and now there are different tools available. Then landform classification is done by using GIS. Then land surface and hydrological analysis is done. Process and erosion modeling is done. Then topographic change detection to hazard susceptibility modeling is done. Some of the examples I'll discuss in detail. Okay, so let's move on the next slide. These are different applications in detail by using GIS. GIS can perform terrain analysis, suitability analysis, for example, dam site. Then it performs land use analysis. It is also required in geomorphology, particularly when you talk about the slope, and when we talk about the human intervention, when we talk about the environmental impact assessment, then land use analysis is required. It can be used to predict hazard risk. Different risk zones can be identified. For example, flood hazard risk or landslide hazard risk can be identified. It analyzes shipping corridors. Shipping corridors. Now you might have heard about the different projects are going on. Shipping, inland shipping and coastal shipping. In this case, in case of ships, if you have to say bring down the large ship up to the port, then there should be sufficient water level available. Okay, so you have to check these water levels. Simply by using echo sounder, you can map that, and then you have to think of the dredging of the material. So such analysis is also possible. It determines the pollution levels. Very obvious by using different say buffer zone or some kind of analysis. You can go for pollution level mapping. It performs sediment yield analysis, like we have erosion models, Russley and USLE. You might have heard several times. So these kind of mapping or modeling is possible through GIS. It determines erosion potential. Again, erosion potential zones or the hazardous zones, erosion hazard zones can be identified. It computes distance to streams. Drainage density is known to you. It works on watershed scale, or even it works on the linear scale. Linear means along the line, distance to streams. If you put the buffer of few meters to kilometers, it will identify the distance from or to stream in both the directions. It determines areas under different altitude zones. Hypsometric analysis is done. For that, you might have studied altitude-wise area you have calculated. So you can find out the areas under different altitude zones. Then we can perform hypsometric analysis, conduct risk assessment. Already prediction of hazard assessment, hazard risk is discussed. This is different thing, different application. It conduct risk assessment. It can be used to model and visualize landform patterns and changes. Visualization of landform patterns and changes. Now 3D visualization is very easy by using digital elevation model. And if you use satellite image with 3D model, you'll be able to generate the actual scenario. What we see in global, not global, this Google Earth, same thing we can produce by using 3D model and a satellite image. Okay, simply you have to put the satellite image on 3D model. So as per this 3D model, the satellite image will be seen. It is like covering the digital elevation model. By using that, we can go for landform patterns and changes. I'll move on the next slide. We can use different indices in geomorphology, like channel sinuosity, mountain front sinuosity, drainage density, that is known to you. Hypsometry, already we have discussed. Relief ratio, then stream frequency. Of course, all these parameters or indices can be used if you have appropriate data and if you have done certain steps, like you have to do digitization or you have to do morphometry, drainage morphometry. For that, you have to delineate the basin, and after delineating the basin, you have to either digitize or you have to find out the drainage network from digital elevation model. Remember that whatever the drainage network you are going to generate by using DAME, that may not be 100% correct. You have to cross-check it, particularly drainage in the areas wherever there are reservoirs. Dams are constructed across the channel, and because of the impounding of the water, the drainage lines are totally submerged. The valleys are submerged, and in that case you will not get actual drainage lines after you generate the drainage from or by using digital elevation model. So you have to cross check these things. Then you can go for drainage density and stream frequency and other indices. Relief ratio for the entire basin, you can check the relief ratio. Then terrain or surface rough or ruggedness index. This is again based on the quality of the dam and the area which you are going to use or you are going to study. So you will get different terrain indices or ruggedness indices for different areas. Then valley width to height ratio. This can be done by using again digital elevation model, steepness index and stream power. So along the longitudinal profile, you might have done longitudinal profile. Along that, we can find out the breaks, steepness changing, then gradient index also more or less same. Then TWI, that is topographic wetness index. This is used to identify the zone of accumulation and all. These are some of the indices where which we can use. Remember that these are some indices which will give you direct results, but in other studies also we can use these indices directly or indirectly. For example, if I have topographic wetness index TWI, or if I go for drainage density, I can find out other parameters. If I take drainage density as, I'm going to explain that part later. Drainage density, you remember this. How will you get different results out of the same parameter? That is the application of drainage density in geomorphic studies. That we'll discuss with one slide. That is an example I've taken. Now, remote sensing data. Raster data looks like this. Many of you might have seen, many of you have not seen. If you zoom a particular area, you'll get only pixelated format in the form of grids. You'll get the zoomed raster data. All these pixels represent different values of reflected light or emitted energy. This is Google Earth. This data is very old. You can see image 2014, digital globe. Anybody can identify. Could you please tell me what is this particular structure? Hello?
Maybe a fort.
Okay, any other?
Some building, office, government office.
Yeah, it is a building, right? It is a building, not a fort. Any other? It is a building, but can you go precisely? Which building is this? This is old data, and that's
It's
why
our main building, sir, university.
maybe it is not that clear. Yes, who
Devidas
is that?
Somani, sir. Devidas.
Oh, no, what? Devidas. Oh, okay. So it is main building, and you can identify it very easily. Okay, this is the view from this the side of our department. Okay, as you go towards main building. Right. So this is main building, and why I have taken this example, I'll tell you a very simple thing. Now, what you can do, are you able to see what I'm going to do here, right? You can mark the lines, something like this, or you can go for something like this, right? Roughly, I'm drawing it. Are you able to see what I've done?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, suppose I have to find out the area. I can find out the area that is occupied by main building. So this one exercise I carried out when I was having problem of data set. What we did, we tried to identify certain features, and then we measured the dimensions physically, and the same dimensions we measured with the help of Google Earth. So what I found, there was an error. Maybe it is because of digitization or any other thing. There was error of 10%, maximum 10%. So if the area of the building was 100 square meter, so we got around 90 or 110, something like that. But that was very close, and in the field of geomorphology, this much of, I won't say good, but it is acceptable, particularly when you study landforms. Okay, so such kind of things we can do by using simple Google Earth, and it is possible. In Google Earth, you have different tools like point, line, and polygon. You can mark the points, and you can check the historical images also, and simply you can find out the changes which are taking place. Suppose you are proposing any topic, so that will be a very good start if you explore with the Google Earth. So this is also DigiGlobe data, and with quite a good spatial resolution. So you start exploring such kind of things, and then try to find out what are the changes, what changes have taken place, or you can find out the trend also. You can find out the distances, areas by using Google Earth. You can actually measure the distance. So there are tools. You can visualize Google Earth in 3D form, and you can actually check how the study area looks like. So it will be better for you to write a proposal or to write the PhD, even PhD study area, about the study area in your PhD thesis. So this is very simple use of Google application, Google Earth. You might have used Google Earth for cross-profile drawing. Maybe you can do that. Okay, if you go for, say, simply, suppose I have to find out, I'm going to draw the road, okay, which is passing by main building from the, something like this. If this is the road, and I have to find out what is the profile, like what we do in dumpy level survey. Okay, so if you have to cross check whether the students have done dumpy level survey properly or not, you can do same thing by using Google Earth, and you can sit in the in your office or cabin, and you can check whether the students have done it properly or not. Starting point and end point you should do with the polyline drawing, and simply go for spatial profile. That is the tool available in Google Earth. So if you go for spatial profile, you will be getting the profile ready-made. Cross profiles, cross sections of the river channels, that is also possible, provided there should not be water. If water is there, then you will not get the proper cross section. If it is dry channel, you will get the good cross section by using simple technique. But remember that this is not very precise. There are chances of errors. After all, it is based on the digital elevation model. And each digital elevation model has vertical error. There is nothing perfect. No perfect DM available. No one can claim that they are 100% correct. Digital elevation models particularly will give you more error in hilly region or mountainous region. For example, when I was studying for my MTech dissertation in Badrinath area in Himalayas, Cartosat dam was of very little use. Then we have collected GCPs, not me, but we got GCPs, almost 200 plus GCPs. And then that dam I could use for my study. So it is not that easy that you have dam and you can do anything with the help of dam. You have to use the dam very wisely because there are errors. X, Y, and Z errors are there. You can check the source of errors in digital elevation model. This is same thing again. You can check the university campus and geography department. Okay. So this is what I did. This is geography department, right? And we have geology here and classroom complex. So you can find out the building, measure the building. For example, if you have to do settlement morphology, then settlement morphology can be done very easily. Simply draw the streets in the settlement and then go for drawing of structures. You can find out the roof areas, you can find out the areas of the households. There are many applications. See, you can see here, we did it for a building, that is geography department. So you can check the perimeter, you can check the area, right? This is how be using this Google Earth for your study area. It could be geomorphology, it could be say area of a particular feature. Like suppose you are working in the coastal area, then you can find out the total beach width, varying beach width, or you can find out the length of the beach before and after a certain period, how it is changing. That can be done by using Google Earth. So if you have to prepare the proposal, you can do that, right? So in this way you can get area of the feature. I have done it for stone quarries. Okay, stone quarries which are around Pune city. We could find very good result by using simple Google Earth, because the spatial resolution images were not available. DAM will not give you very clear idea, and therefore Google Earth helps you to get certain idea about such kind of studies. Road width, same thing you can do for channel. Channel width can be found. Okay, like this is road. Now we have in front of environment department. Okay, just before the bottom department at the junction, this road width can be calculated. Same thing you can do for channel width, valley width in geomorphology. Any dimension you can check. I mean 2D, any 2D. 3D also you can do, but for that you have to do certain kind of visualization. These are the DAM data sources which you can use directly. Earth Resource Observation and Sciences, EROS, USGS, Google Earth Library, then GTOPO, which is 1 kilometer. For certain studies, GTOPO will definitely help. SRTM, 90 meter. Then Aster GDAM, 1 arc second. 1 arc second is around 30 meters. We say 30 meters, but it is slightly less than 30 meters. But it is, say, upscale to 30 meters. Okay, so Aster GDAM, it is also one of the most popular DAM which is used nowadays. So these are different sources of DAM data. Now, Aster 25 meters, sometimes it is 25, 30, written like this, but this is 1 arc second. Aster ortho coverage. Now, normally we don't use these data sets. Now you have Alaskan satellite facility. That is also one data set available. Sentinel data available. So there are many such sources which we can use. Now, remote sensing data analysis, visual interpretation, use of filters, digital image classification, and spatial indices. These are some of the techniques which are used in remote sensing. Visual interpretation is known to us, like as I told you, Google Earth you can use directly. Use of filters, yes. We can use some filters like filters to identify linear features, particularly directional filters which are available in case of image processing tools. Okay, so directional filters you can use to identify certain linear features like dikes, lineaments. Okay, so these filters can be used for such kind of features. We can go for digital image classification, and you can prepare the classes. By using land use and land cover, you can identify certain areas. Even you can identify water bodies like stream or channel bed by doing image classification. There are spatial indices. These indices are mainly to identify the material. Or for example, you have NDSI, Normalized Differential Snow Index, which will give you glacial areas, which will give you snow area. Then you have NDWI, will give you water bodies. NDVI will give you vegetation. These are the indicators. Directly you can use, or indirectly you can use these indices to get some geomorphic information, like it could be landform, it could be process, or it could be material. So by using these indices directly or indirectly, you will get the information about that particular study area. These are some of the examples. Now this is one simple thing what we did. The area is same, digital elevation model is same, but still you are getting different result. Yes or no? Visual interpretation. Visually you can check how you are getting more details or missing the details. Cartosat DAM. Global mapper is used, simple global mapper, and in global mapper there are options available of color shading. The first one is Atlas shader, second one is color ramp shader, third one on the left hand side, bottom left is daylight shader, and fourth one is global shader. Now simply by changing the shades, you will either miss or you will get the information about the study area. For example, if I have to go for lineament mapping in the coastal areas, I'll go for color ramp shader. and I can get very straight lines, very long lines, which are actually lineaments and through which the streams are or the channels are moving, okay, or these are helping channels to form. So I can get lineament simply by changing the color shade. That's what I told. Software is same. Then dataset is same. Only I have changed color ramp, and I could get more information. Sometimes, if I don't want more information, then I'll go for different color ramp. For example, suppose I have to show only major water bodies. What I'll do, I'll go for daylight shader. So I'll be showing only large rivers or large water bodies in this area. Okay. So such kind of things we can do simply by changing the color or by changing the options within in the color. Like you can go for FCC, you can go for TCC, you can go for HSV, hue, saturation and value. These combinations are also there. Or you can change the color, these band combinations. FCC you can use, different FCCs. Not only standard, but different FCCs can be used. It's the same thing again, gradient shader, then HSV shader. This is what I told you, HSV, RGB is changed to HSV. Then you have slope shader and slope direction shader. So ultimately, all these things will give me idea about whatever I want. It would be easy for me to identify the feature and to get certain information about that feature. So for example, slope shader, if I go for slope shader, then for me it is very easy to identify the dam reservoirs. You can see here in the slope shader, bottom left, this one. I'm drawing this particular area. This is Koyna Reservoir. Koyna Reservoir, it is very easy. On the right hand side, you can see the slope direction shader. So it becomes very prominent if I go from slope shader. Okay, so I can find out how much it is extending and how it is, what is the spread of this. This is possible. I have made these maps very small. You can zoom it and you can actually digitize or extract that much of part by using raster query. Okay. This is 3D view. Of course, it is again the same. Global mapper is used. Same area and global mapper is used. Topographic index model. As I told you, we can go for different applications in detail. So this topographic index model is used to show the contributing area, upslope contributing area. That means how much area will contribute to a particular point. That will give you flow accumulation. This is used by the software itself when you are going to generate drainage map by using digital elevation model. So software uses this particular index, and if there are more number of pixels which are contributing as upslope area, then that particular pixel will be the zone of accumulation, and it will be one important pixel where you may get confluence of the streams. So such kind of things are possible by using topographic index model. Now, why this flow accumulation is important? Even in stream hydrology, or we can use it in even in animal sciences, plant or freshwater fish catch, to know the freshwater vegetation, particularly riparian vegetation or animals in the freshwater. So that kind of study will also use such indices. In this particular figure, you can check the slide. What I did, I have done cross section by using SRTM. You have one option of cross section. So right from Karst Plateau, that is seen towards the right of this particular screenshot, and up to the Arabian Sea. Okay, coastline, Konkan coast. If you go for cross profile, you will get the variation something like this. Okay, cross profile can be drawn and you can export this as a picture. Multiple cross profiles can be generated, and every time you can save that as in picture form. You'll get the distance, you'll get the elevation, you'll get the starting point, latitude and longitude, and end point, latitude and longitude and latitude. So that across along that line, whatever the changes are taking place, you'll get the cross profile of that. Hillshade, hill slope analysis. Again, hill slope will give you very important inputs. Concave, low gradient areas will have more water, that is low water index, while convex areas will shed water. So there won't be availability of water. It will be high water index values. Wetness index. So hill slope wetness index, or TWI, already we have discussed. This is used in different applications. Even for the plantation purpose, we can find out such kind of areas. The areas with high wetness index will not be suitable for plantation, while the areas with low wetness index will be more suitable for plantation along the slope. So such kind of things, not only plantation, even the CCTs, we do CCTs, right? Continuous contour trenching. That is also one important application in watershed management. Mosaic of multiple dams. This is how we'll get the scenario of the entire area, study area. You can check. This is an example of Bhima Basin by using Bhuvan data. Now let's move on to the next slide. Contour generation. Again, by using ArcMap, this is very simple. Now you have so many things available, and you can find out the trend of contours. You can find out the how the contours are changing, how the slope is changing. In global mapper also, we can do the same thing. Flow direction, already we have discussed this. This can be done by using ArcMap or ArcGIS. 3D stream network or wireframe. So we can generate 3D to understand, to get an idea about the study area. Particularly when you talk about the geomorphology of the area, you should get the synoptic view of that area. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. Stream analysis or stream generation can be done by using Strawler's method. First order streams, second order streams can be. Stream ordering is also possible. Drainage density, this is one example I was telling. Yes, drainage density, of course, it is useful for geomorphology students, but it will also give you some idea about other details, like high density indicates more number of channels. Okay, so a high density also indicate one or more of the following causes why it is high. The drainage network is mature, it is well developed channel system, that's why it is high density. More surface runoff, and therefore more number of channels are formed. More surface runoff. Why there is more surface runoff? Because the slope is steep or the underlying rock is hard. So if the rock is hard, surface runoff is more. Okay. So that is indirect inference. One more thing, that is runoff is more because the surfaces are bare. The surface on which the water is moving, these are bare, without forest, deforested. No vegetation cover, or it is bare surface. And therefore, because of the steep slope, low infiltration is there. Low infiltration is there, and groundwater recharge will be low. So if the infiltration rate is less, obviously the groundwater recharge in the recharge zone will be less. So such kind of indirect inferences we can find out simply by using drainage density. And drainage density you can do by using GIS. It is total length of the channels divided by basin area. Both the things you will get simply by using GIS technique. Yes, this is already we have discussed. This I will not go with. While discussing previous slides, we have discussed linear feature interpretation. That also we have discussed, like lineaments, fault lines. This already we have discussed, right? So high pass filters are used to get these linear filters through remote sensing data and by using image processing software. So this I will not explain. This is slightly technical and the time is very short. This is what I was telling: NDVI, NDSI, NDWI. These can be used as indirect indices. That means if you don't have the data directly available, if you don't have the information, we can indirectly use these indices. Okay, I'll tell you how. This is the map which I have prepared for snow cover. So if you look at the index, it is in two colors. One is green, the other one is gray. Okay. So when the NDSI value is less than 0.4, there is no snow. Then the other one is, if the NDSI value is more than 0.4, it is snow cover. This can be confirmed by using NDVI. Okay. If there is snow, then there won't be any vegetation. So if I use NDSI and NDVI, then it is very obvious that I should get same result. But there will be certain variation. If there is no snow, but it doesn't mean there will be vegetation. The surface may be bare, open surface. So that cannot be confirmed. So I have to think of such different conditions where I can use the index properly. If I get snow area, I can find out many other parameters of the glacial geomorphology, right? Like what is the health of the glacier, that I can find out. I can find the accumulation area ratio, AAR. So such things are there which I can get directly or indirectly. Okay. Now this is what is the study area, and I have used NDVI. NDVI will give an idea about the distribution of the vegetation. The bright color, that is giving more NDVI values, that means more vegetation cover. Okay, and the dark color is shadow as well as low vegetation. Shadow also you have to take care, because Landsat in the terrain like Himalaya, you will get the effect of shadow even in satellite data. This is what we extracted by using NDWI. What are these spots? These are the licks, particularly within the line. What you are getting within the polygon, these are the supraglacial lakes. That means the lakes which are actually moving on the glaciers because of the melting of Valley Glacier. These kind of small lakes are formed. Then we have compared supraglacial lakes for different years, like for 78, then 90, 99, 2009. And what is found here, it is indirect indicator. If more number of lakes are there with subsequent images, it is very obvious that the ice or glacier is melting if we get more area and more number. If the number is same, then the melting has not increased. But if the number is same and area is increasing, obviously melting is more. So such kind of indirect indicators we can use to study the glaciers also by using NDWI. Yes, this is little complicated diagram. Just I'll take few minutes and then we'll stop. I know the time is over. So if you look at this diagram, there are some limitations of using spatial and temporal resolutions of satellite sensors upon geomorphological research. Now, you will not get the satellite data which is more than 20-25 years, or nowadays it is almost 40 years. Beyond 40 years, you will not get the Landsat or the satellite data. Okay, so on y-axis it is the temporal resolution, and on x-axis it is spatial resolution. So these red lines will limit the availability of data. So beyond 40 years or 50 years, you will not get the data. Beyond that, you have studies like quaternary and climate change studies. Okay, then plate tectonics and mega geomorphology studies. Mega means regional scale geomorphology studies. This is not possible with the help of satellite data. Okay, then you don't have the data which is less than 0.5 or 0.4 spatial 0.4 meter spatial resolution, x-axis, and within these limits you can do different geomorphic studies or research, like aeolian landform monitoring can be done. Small catchment analysis or monitoring study can be done. Then platform of alluvial landforms can be studied. Alluvial landforms. Then coastal and estuarine studies, then geological studies, then dust storms. All these things can be done with different spatial resolutions. Like normally we have data available that is in the form of DAIM and satellite images, which we can use with the spatial resolution up to 0.5 meter to 1 to 5 kilometers. Okay, so this is how different studies can be done within the limit of spatial and temporal resolutions. These are the different sites, particularly Bhuvan. I have given here just to understand what kind of data sets are available, like Bhuvan 2D, Bhuvan 3D, Open Data Archive, Climate and Environment. Then you have Ocean Services, Disaster Management, Thematic Services. There are many things which are available on Bhuvan. Some data sets are ready to use, some you have to download. Of course, you have to register for that. Like already I have told you, but there are some more like agriculture, water, forestry, and e-governance. These are also available on Bhuvan portal. Then one example I have taken from this NRSC, that is National Database for Emergency Management, NDEM. So here you will get examples like Bihar Flood Hazard Atlas. Bihar Flood Hazard Atlas, or you may have Groundwater Atlas. There are many atlases prepared by NRSC which can be used with the permission. So there is no, say, it is not like that no data is available. You can use the data sets from various sources. These are some of the freeware and extensions, links of the some tools or softwares or even databases like DEM Surface Tools. Then you have XTools Pro. And some of these are very old examples. So now you have different tools available which are better than the old one. Like Channel Restorationist, they have the tool available on geomorphic.wordpress.com. Okay, then you have GIS for geomorphology. You can go for this GIS 4 number and geomorphology. Such kind of portals are available. Last one, opentopography.org. You can check this also. But it is not necessary that it will be available for your area. There are many such examples for fluvial research. Then you have LIDAR data, fluvial hydrology related data. Now we have very good example of WARIS, the website of Government of India. It is there are many things available on WARIS website. Then you have Bhuvan, I have told you. Okay, thank you. You can use many such remote sensing and GIS techniques in your study. It may not be directly required, but indirectly you can analyze it and get some information. Thank you. We'll stop here. It is already 6:10. I hope you have enjoyed it. And if you have any question, we can go for those questions.
Participant, please ask question. Session is open for asking question.
Jyoti madam, if any question, then ask.
No,
Your
it's a
hand is
mistake.
raised.
It's a mistake.
Any participants have any doubt, please ask the questions.
Yeah, you can contact me later also. I'm available in the Department of Geography. Anytime you can come. And I think my email has been shared to you, or you can, many of the students, they know me. You can contact them and you can come to me. This is very basic, I have told you. Of course, there are many things which can be done, which are little complicated, but considering the audience, I thought I should not go for all those things.
Mule sir, I think Mule sir continue.
Okay, then I request to Vikas Devekar sir for vote of thanks.
Good evening to all. I am Vikas Divekar, here for vote of thanks Dr. Sudhakar Pardesi sir from his busy schedule come and deliver very wonderful lecture on the topic of application of remote sensing and GIS in geomorphology, which will helpful for our further progress. So thank you, sir. SP College in charge principal Dr. Datar ma'am, HOD Dr. Sunil Gaikwad sir, course coordinator Dr. Devne sir, joint coordinator Dr. Dawle sir. I thanks to everyone. I need all research fellow. I thanks to all. Thank you again to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your valuable lecture. Yes.
Assistant coordinator and the organizers for giving this chance to me to communicate with you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Participants, don't leave the meeting. Please 2-3 minutes.
No,
Yes,
I am
yes, sir.
leaving,
Yes,
sir.
sir. No problem. Thank you, sir. Okay. There is two or three announcements related to our course. So please don't leave the meeting. I will take only 2-3 minutes. Okay. I think am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir. Yeah.
Today's this is announcement for everyone. Today's meeting has been cancelled because of some technical issue, because Devne sir has not feeling well, so that's why today's meeting we have cancelled. Has been cancelled. And there are two announcements related to our national webinar, which is held in SPPU Pune. जे आपलं वेबिनार आहे 19 आणि 20 मेचं त्याच्या संदर्भात आहे. We will have arrange a meeting related to presentation, what's related to presentation and other things. But today सरांनी जसं सांगितलंय मला की तसं त्याप्रमाणे की तुम्ही ज्या त्याच्या फॉर्मॅलिटीज आहेत त्या कम्प्लीट करून घ्या related to national webinar, means registrations and other things, and you also send your abstracts to concerned authority. तुम्ही जे ॲबस्ट्रॅक्ट तयार केलेले असतील ते सुद्धा सेंड करून ठेवा, कारण आपण असं ठरवलं होतं की एकत्र करून सेंड करायचं की काय, पण सर म्हटले की नाही, इंडिव्हिज्युअल जरी सेंड केलं तरी चालेल, कारण देवणे सर गायबाई सरांशी बोललेत तर ते म्हणले इंडिव्हिज्युअल सेंड केलं तरी चालेल. तर ज्या फॉर्मॅलिटीज असतील त्या कम्प्लीट करून तुम्ही ते ॲबस्ट्रॅक्ट सेंड करा. देन अनदर थिंग दॅट इज रिलेटेड टू link which is already upload on our WhatsApp group. तुम्ही जर आता आपला व्हॉट्सअप ग्रुप बघितला तर त्या व्हॉट्सअप ग्रुप वरती मी एक लिंक, स्प्रेडशीटची लिंक अपलोड केलेली आहे. तर त्या लिंक मध्ये प्लीज आपल्याला काय म्हणता येईल की इंटर द टायटल ऑफ युअर ॲबस्ट्रॅक्ट जो तुम्ही विद्यापीठाला सेंड करणार आहात आता, आणि डेट ऑफ सबमिशन असे 2 कॉलम मी केलेले आहेत. ऑलरेडी तुमचं नाव तिथे आहे, युअर नेम्स इज ऑलरेडी देअर. त्या नावाच्या तुमच्या समोर तुम्ही तुमचं टायटल आणि तुमची डेट ऑफ सबमिशन, तुम्ही कधी ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट सबमिट केलाय, या 2 गोष्टी त्यामध्ये अपडेट करा, इंटर करा, की जेणेकरून त्याचा डेटा आमच्याकडे जनरेट होईल की किती मुलांनी ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट सेंड केलेले आहेत. ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट सेंड केले की इमिजिएटली तो डेटा त्याच्यावरती इंटर करणं, थोडंसं काळजीने तेवढं इंटर करा की जेणेकरून डेटा आमच्याकडे जनरेट होईल आणि तो आपल्याला जायभाय सरांशी कन्सर्न करून आपल्याला जे सेशन ठेवायचे त्या सेशनच्या संदर्भात आपल्याला ते उपयोगी पडेल. ओके, आय थिंक या 2च अनाउन्समेंट होत्या, मीटिंग कॅन्सलची आणि रिलेटेड टू आपल्या या 2 वेबिनारच्या संदर्भात. जर तुम्हाला काही इश्यू असतील, आय थिंक त्या दिवशी काहीतरी पल्लवी मॅडम का कोणीतरी प्रेझेंटेशनच्या संदर्भात देवणे सरांना विचारत होतं, तर सर तेच म्हणले की त्याच्या संदर्भात आपण नंतर एक परत मीटिंग अरेंज करू, कारण अजून त्याला भरपूर दिवस आहे. तोपर्यंत तुम्ही प्रेझेंटेशन प्रिपेअर करून ठेवले तरी चालतील आणि मग त्याच्या संदर्भात आपण एक सेपरेट मीटिंग लावू, अरेंज करू. पण आता सध्या तरी थोडेसे ते हेल्थ प्रॉब्लेम असल्यामुळं सर आपल्याला सध्या मीटिंग आता लगेच अरेंज करता येणार नाहीये. त्यामुळं थोडं आपण थांबूयात, कारण अजून भरपूर दिवस आहेत. फक्त तोपर्यंत हे सगळ्या गोष्टी तुम्ही तयार करून ठेवावं असं मेसेज सरांनी पाठवलेला आहे. इफ देर इज एनी क्वेश्चन रिगार्डिंग दिस, प्लीज आस्क, नाहीतर मग आपण थांबूया.
सर फक्त ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्टच बनवायचा आहे की फुल पेपर?
नाही, ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्टच बनवायचे सध्या आपल्याला.
आणि हा पेपर कन्सिडर होणार आहे कसं पीएचडीच्या फेल्युअर मध्ये?
प्रेझेंट करणार आहे ना आपण, प्रेझेंटचं सर्टिफिकेट मिळणार आहे.
सर ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट जरी तयार केला तरी शेवटी पेपर तयार करावाच लागेल प्रेझेंटेशन साठी.
आणि मग तुम्ही पाठवू शकता ना, तुम्ही फुल पेपर पाठवला तरी काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही. आपण कमीत कमी ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट म्हटलं होतं ना.
हो सर. आणि
लास्ट डेट कधी सर?
5 तारीख, 5 मे काहीतरी.
5 मे, बरोबर.
हे बघा, तिथं 2 ऑप्शन असतात. जसं आपण म्हटलं की तुम्ही प्रेझेंटही करू शकता, तुम्हाला प्रेझेंटचं सर्टिफिकेट मिळेल, आणि तुम्ही फुल पेपर पब्लिश करायचा असेल तर येस पब्लिश. पण आता मला वाटत नाही तिथं पब्लिशचं ऑप्शन आहे. तुम्ही बघितलं का त्याच्यात पब्लिश आहे का? मला नाही वाटत त्यात आहे. 1 मिनिट, आपल्याकडे हे आहे, आपल्या ग्रुपवरती त्याची आपण ही टाकलेली आहे ना PDF. हा, फक्त ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट पब्लिश करणार आहेत, फुल पेपर नाही पब्लिश करणार. हा, ते आता आहे आपल्याकडे ओपन. मुळे सर हा, फक्त ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट म्हणजे आपण कसं सोविनर सारखं काढतो, सोविनर वगैरे असतात त्या पद्धतीनं ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट फक्त ते पब्लिश करणार आहेत, पूर्ण पेपर नाहीये तिथं. पूर्ण पेपरला आपल्याला
प्रेझेंटेशन पण ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट वरतीच राहील ना सर मग?
हो, मग त्याचेच आपण म्हटलं ना की एक 3-4 मिनिटं, 4 ते 5 मिनिटाचं आपलं प्रेझेंटेशन असणार आहे, जास्त काही नाहीये. म्हणजे तुमचा जो टॉपिक असेल त्या टॉपिकशी रिलेटेड, म्हणून तुमच्या टॉपिकशी रिलेटेड घ्या आपण म्हटलं होतं ना, की ते तुम्हाला ऑलरेडी नोन आहे, अननोन नाहीये, काही नोन आहे अशाच गोष्टी. बोला ना
सर. एक आपली ऍक्टिव्हिटी म्हणून घ्यायची की काय नेमकं? कारण की जर आपल्याला PhD जर हे 2 पेपर लागतात आपल्या बरोबर, मग आपली फक्त एक ऍक्टिव्हिटी म्हणून घ्यायची का असं?
ऍक्टिव्हिटीज आहे आपली ती एक. आपली याच्या अंतर्गत आपण ते पकडणार आहे, कन्सिडर करणार आहे ना. त्या दिवशी आपण सांगितलं ना सगळं. कारण की पेपर ज्यावेळेस तुम्ही पब्लिश करणार आहे ना, तर ते केअर लिस्ट किंवा UGC आपण याच्यानुसार तुम्ही ते बाहेर करू शकता. हा फक्त आपला ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट असणार आहे. ऍब्स्ट्रॅक्ट इज डिफरंट आणि फुल.
गाईडचं पण नाव लागेल ना त्यावेळेस, म्हणून म्हटलं.
आणि इथं पण काय अडचण नाही, इथं पण तुम्ही गाईडचं नाव मेन्शन करू शकता सर, काय अडचण नाही.
ओके.
हो,
थँक्यू.
कारण आता तुम्ही अंडर द गायडन्स सरांचेच करणार आहे ना, सो दॅट्स वाय तुम्ही तुमचं गाईडचं नाव टाकू शकता.
थँक्यू सर.
येस. जर काय नाही एनी क्वेश्चन किंवा काय आहे का प्रॉब्लेम नसेल तर मग आपण थांबूया.